Welcome, Jonsson.
Today I'm going to pass on the learnings and the sharings that I've had around the world. And it's at least $100,000 I invested in these courses and training in the last decade. And I continue to do those investments this year, another $20,000 investment, to grow myself and to grow the people. I am a best-selling author, and I would say that the reason I'm a best-selling author is because I'm not shy on my dark side. Most people, when they talk about themselves, they talk about the great things, the achievements and so on. But I think, and I say, the golden nuggets are in our dark side. So in this book, I'm talking about the darkest moments of my life, when I hit rock bottom, when I was suffering from alcoholism, and when I was completely burnt out. The kind of topics that people will think twice to stand up and talk about. I published that on a book that is official to buy on Amazon. So the toughest moments of my life is public, then I can stand here and I can feel good about myself because I have nothing to hide. I'm an open book and transparent. And then that means that other people who might suffer from any form of isolation, loneliness, or addictions will feel very safe to approach me and talk to me because I share my struggles. The first question is then, why do goals fail?
There's a stronger why to what you want to achieve.
Yeah, not a strong why. I couldn't agree more. Because this is what we see. The new year, people put New Year's resolutions, right? And we all saw the gym the first weeks of January. Yeah, you saw this? Yeah. Forget about it. Forget about going to the gym in January. It's going to be even a queue outside, right? But what does it look like now in February? Yeah. So people have made a New Year's resolution. But there was no why behind it, was it? It's an idea, we say, yeah, I'm going to get fit now. Well, okay. But if you don't have the why behind you, if there's no faults there, but also if there's no accountability, no discipline, no measuring, then perhaps it doesn't get done. So that's what I will share today with you, how I created that why, and also that accountability and the discipline to make it happen. But to get there, I also need to share a little bit about my journey, very briefly. I know some of you have heard it, but I'm going to take you through briefly. So I started my life as a construction painter in Sweden, painting buildings and so on. My family was in construction, so that was normal. One day I got hit by a motorbike, had an accident, injured my back and neck. The doctor said, Nick, you can't continue as a painter. That was the first time I hit a depression, and I remember thinking that life is over. Out of there, eventually I came back, and I went back into adult high school. I then went to study, and eventually I moved to Australia in 1998, and I'm on the road since, you could say. I started to study, and I got a taste for success at the time. I studied hard, I got scholarships and so on, and that became my addiction at the time. I defined myself in being the hard-working student. When I was without partying, I was working really hard and getting good grades. I brought that mindset with me in the workplace, worked my way up the corporate ladder, achieved what I could, but I didn't have much going for me outside of work. I worked extremely hard, and I worked so hard until I eventually burned out. And in the workplace, I was terrified of being vulnerable. I didn't share about my challenges. When I had conversations with my mentors and coaches, I would try my best to impress them. Because I knew that also my mentors had perhaps a signature on my next promotions and my bonuses, and that's what I wanted, that's what I cared for. I went to the bar and I put on that smile. I gained all this weight and I was in a full-blown depression, but I also was in denial about it at the time. I didn't share to anyone what was happening, and I just kept it inside. I went through divorce and so on, and I tumbled down until I thought my life was over. So that was the dark moment of my life. A decade ago, which I wrote about in my book later on. I really thought that life was over. I need to say I wasn't suicidal. I didn't have suicidal thoughts, but I also didn't care if I would wake up next day. I didn't have that why inside me. It didn't really matter. I had to surrender to alcohol then as well. I walked into the community of recovery programs and I said, I'm an alcoholic, I need help. And by just admitting that, I surrendered it, and I hadn't had a drink since. That's 7.5 years ago. So that's the magic of taking ownership and surrendering to our challenges. It doesn't have to be alcohol. In my case it was, but many of my coaching clients can have alcohol problem, drug problem, gambling problem, a lot of gambling problem. People are gambling online, getting a salary, spending it within the next 24 hours, taking ownership for that, asking for help. That's where the solution should be. So the first step indeed was surrender for me. Just think about that, and if this was a workshop, we will go deep. I will ask you to really map out what is it that you can surrender, or you can take a mental note or write it down for yourself and think about that. Is it something in your life that is broken? In my life, it was that I didn't speak about my challenges. I had developed an alcohol problem that I was in denial about. So think about an honest look at yourself. Is it something you need to surrender? Because once we come to the goals later on, they will only work for a short moment, like we see in that June picture. We come to it, why the purpose. Let me ask you, do you know the life purpose? Who knows your life purpose? Anyone else? I see more hands here today than I normally see. I ask this in all conferences and so on. Even in the crowd of 1,000 people, when I ask it, I see 3-4 hands going up and then just empty faces, blank faces. We don't really know our life purpose, right? It's a big question and we maybe not start asking it. But once I start to ask myself that, things happen and things change. And I love how Mark Twain put it, the 2 most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. What I also learned in my work on myself and with others on finding the purpose is we can have many purposes in our life. If we just look for one, it's going to be too hard. It's about having meaning in many parts of our lives and mapping that out. This was 2019, so I was 1 year into my recovery. 1 year after I had surrendered and started to speak and starting to get help, and suddenly this happened to me. I got sad, I got angry, but I went into action. And that day I called SOS Samaritans, the suicide prevention agency here, and I set up this fund, raised the end of executive loneliness, started to collect money, talking about it. That was my way to deal with the shock. At this time, I don't hold it inside me, I don't go to drink over it, I talk about it. So I did everything I could. I called them at SOS, I said I want to help, how can I support? I called the family, I got involved with the funeral arrangements. I just kept asking, how can I be of service, how can I be of service, how can I be of service? And in that way, going over this. I made a social media post that went viral all around the world where I talked about that we need to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, which means suicide is in our community. Let's not deny it, let's talk about this. And that's the dialogue that I keep having today. And that led me then to writing this book, which is dedicated to someone. That was my next step in dealing with his death and talking about this conversation was to put it in a book. This is from Straight Times. They also interviewed me and they called me the lonely leaders. I had all articles all around this world. So we talk about executive presence, we talk about thought leadership. Well, people want to shine, people want to sound good. I'm the lonely leader, the burnt out leader and so on. But I didn't care because I felt this is me. It helps with this for anyone who's a coach in here, or have done coaching, you've probably seen the wheel of life. I know it's very simple, but I like to simplify things, but I believe this is essential. And if you're just looking at this one, there's 8 parts here, where business and career is just one of them. So in my life before, I would say probably business and career represented perhaps 80% of my focus of my life. But in this, when it's 8 parts, it's 12.5%. Even if we talk about work-life balance, a term that I don't like, that means that business and career is 50% and the rest of life is 50%, which is also not fair, right? It should be 12.5%. Then we have finances, we have health, which is physical, mental, social health. Family and friends, romance, our marriage, or if we're single, our journey towards finding the partner. Personal growth, spirituality, fun and recreation, and the physical environment, which is the city, the country, the house we live in. So it's about becoming intentional and working in all of those areas. Having meaningful goals, defined goals, clear goals, smart goals, in all areas. that was the game changer in my life, and that's been the game changer for the most executives that I work with. Which one do you think had the biggest gap when I do this with senior executives?
Number 6.
Health. Business and career or personal growth, biggest gap. What else? Sorry? 3, which is health. Yeah. Romance, yes. Yeah, family, friends, romance. Yeah, we're getting closer to it. So I'm collecting all this data and huge number of workshops, so I can see it in the region, I can see it global, and I can look at it per country. Yeah, the biggest gaps we see is in health over Asia. So the biggest gap is health. And it sits around a 4 over 10. It's basically the score. The lowest is in Malaysia. The biggest gap in Malaysia, they have about 3.5. Current score. And whenever we do this one, especially when we do it in Malaysia, I do it frequently, I will do this workshop twice in KL this week, and the people start to cry. Because maybe they haven't been thinking about the health for many years, or many times. Because no one can tell them the company is happy if they show up and do the job, or they forgot who's responsible for the health. No one tells them to do it, so they forgot. And what's the smallest gap is business and career growth. So what story does that tell us? So we have been building our business and career, our success commercially, at the expense of our health as a trainer. There's obviously a clear priority. Okay, I don't care much about my health, I care about my career and my business. Also finance is very small. I'm talking mainly to senior executives that I'm training, and finance is just a small gap. Of course, if I do it at lower level, middle level, and so on, the finance has a big gap. For top executives like this group, then typically it is business and career, the smallest gap, health, the biggest. And then followed by that, yes, I have some romance. Because most of the executives in my training have been married 20, 30 years. And what is happening after 20, 30 years with the romance? Start perhaps to take the relationship for granted. We tick that box, yes, I'm married, that's already done. But once we start to take something for granted, once we don't work on it, it's like muscles, right? We lose them if we don't work on it. And that intention has been lost somewhere. And especially worse if it's even 2 partners that are working. If both of them are focusing on business and career, ignoring the health, and then the relationship also collapses. That's they're coming as another client as a divorce client going through the divorce. It's nothing there. So that's the sad picture that this tells us, and that's what I see. But at least now you have seen it, so you have a chance to ask yourself. Perhaps look at your gaps. If it is in health or in romance, perhaps that's an issue. And perhaps there's some opportunity to really work on that and to make it meaningful and setting some goals around that. But it can also be tweaking. And many other executives I've worked with also have had a surprisingly low score on physical environment. And I've stopped all this one blind. And one of my clients, he lived in a double penthouse down on Orchard, a very, very expensive address where many other people from Crazy Rich Asian lives in. So when I really questioned him on a coaching call, why do you live there, what happened, and so on, he said, yeah, it's a good address, good for entertainment, good for have clients, and so on. Because he put a 3 out of 9 on physical environment, and I thought it was strange. Why would he put a 3 when he lives in this beautiful place? I think the rent was 35,000 or something. And so I kept challenging it, and then I was, okay, if you think back in time, when were you happy? Tell me what your life would look like. Oh yeah, I grew up in Australia, I grew up on a farm, animals around and all this, and painting the picture, right? And he got all excited as he was sharing about it. So it was lacking the intention. Lack of sitting down and thinking, what am I doing here when I'm signing up for this fancy pen? His relationship was broken, almost going to divorce. He has talking, he also went back to the wife, who is another senior executive in a big role. And she also didn't do that yet, but they had not really spoken about it. But when they did that, they now moved to a landed house, a big house with a garden and a pool in Bugatima, where the kids can run around, they're very happy. Plus, we worked on his health, and he loved to get into kickboxing, where he said, I'm working too much, I don't really have time, so he installed his own gym on the rooftop. And he has a trainer coming over a few mornings of the week to do that. It's having that intention, making some tweaks. And he saved quite some money also in the shift. It was actually cheaper than also cheap. Now we're taking it a step further, because this was 2 years ago. The next step now is for him to move back to Australia. Because we've been working even closer on this, the families are getting older and so on. But that's something that would never have come up otherwise. He would have grinded on here, because he's been here for 15 years. So would the wife, but having that intention. Just discussing it. So many times you meet someone who says, yeah, I came to Singapore, I'm only supposed to be there 2 years, but now it's 25 years. And it might be good, it might be a positive story, but sometimes also perhaps it's the path because we drove the car without the headlight. So I'm encouraging all of you to take a moment to reflect. You have a weekend coming up, so you have a chance to reflect, go deep inside yourself, have some conversations with the people around you. You can also share this assessment with them if you like. I share the deck with all of you and I can share the assessment after. It'll be a good conversation. Husband and wife to print and see what's your gaps and talk about it. Have a healthy conversation. See what can be done. Any questions on this one? Yes?
Yeah, I'm curious. Why is there a desire score? Wouldn't you always like you want to rate yourself out of 10 for all the years and then you get a gap? Why the desire score?
Yeah, so it might be that someone has, let's say you've been in the corporate world 20 years, you save up money, you already have money on the bank for a rainy day, you have your pension sorted out, then maybe finances, your current score there for the finances might be an 8 or a 9, you're pretty good there. And then maybe your desire is the same, you don't need it. In fact, one very wealthy client of mine in Poland, he put his current score in finances 10, desire score 7. First time I've seen that. He said his biggest problem in life is that he inherited a lot of money and a company after his father died in an airplane crash, a very big business. And money is destroying his life. He cannot do what he wants, so he wants to focus less on money. Yeah, some people, but it's having that, but just to have that conversation with him and seeing the rest made him start shifting his focus. And since then he appointed a CEO for the business and he put a business for sale. He's trying to get out of it because the root cause was he did feel big steps after his father when he passed, but he didn't question it for 15, 20 years. He's just been running it, but it's not his true passion and love. So when we find his purpose and mapping it out, is how can he focus less on that? But it could also be some other area. Let's say that you have maybe someone who also don't want to focus too much on money. You might have a desire score 7. There's only one or more of these I have a desire score in 10. Can someone guess? Which one would have a desire score 10?
Fun.
Health actually. I have a desire here of 10. The most rest is 9. But fun and recreation is amazing to have this conversation in coaching time. And typically, one coaching call 1 hour per sector, and you go really deep. And many busy executives have perhaps forgotten about have fun. Yeah? Maybe they have a bucket list, but from having a bucket list to talking about it, to being challenged on it, to putting wheels in motion is a different thing. So one particular client, the CEO of one of the biggest firms in Singapore, I had this conversation with. He spent the last 30 years to drive his career. He'd never taken a 2 weeks holiday even. And when he laid out his bucket list, one that was Wimbledon final, one that was Grand Prix Melbourne, and it was to take his wife to see Taj Mahal. Those were the three things on his list. And that was a year ago, and he's done all 3 things. But it was just that he didn't even have that 1 hour to think about it, to write it down, to make it a homework, to go to ChatGPT and asking it, how can I get tickets to Wimbledon? But that step is the action point, and then just sticking that in about just being deliberate and challenging it inside out. So I worked on all of these things myself with my coach. And physical environment. When I worked on this, John and I lived in Marina Bay in Singapore. But during 2022, I had traveled over 250 days. So when I was working in physical environment, I laid out then how much do I pay rent in Marina Bay for that apartment. So just traveling and so on. And I looked at it, and how happy am I that I think I put it as a 6 or a 7, because I felt I came from a small country town, it felt pretty corporate and so on. Also because it was close to see clients and business. I wasn't overly happy, and it was a high price to pay. So where would I be happy? And I started to have conversations with John, and I mapped out Bali, Phuket, Cook Island. I mapped out all these places where I could cycle, because that was my purpose, right? Where can I cycle? Where's the best cycling in Asia? Then I spoke to John, and let's travel around Asia. Let's spend 2-3 weeks at all these places. We went everywhere. And I cycled and I went around. It's like in traffic in Bali, so that didn't work out for me for cycling. Then we went on, and then we came to Phuket. South Phuket for the tourists, not good. North Phuket, then cycle off the island, nature parks. So we found my area. So I terminated the lease here in Singapore, freed up a lot of cash. We've made, so far I bought 2 small apartments there for the same money I paid for renting. So I own that apartment, so it also helped my finances. It helped me also on the physical environment part. But what was blocking me, I realized during these coaching conversations, was business and career. My reputation. What about if someone, I should live in Singapore, my business is there, my work, people will not do business with someone living in Phuket. It sounds like a city, like a beach bum on the beach with my laptop. So that was what stopped me. But once I surrendered that thought and just got on with it, the freedom lies there. So many times, perhaps we do something for others rather than ourselves. Any more questions? Yes?
I understand your audience is mostly executive. I'm curious if you have any data about the younger generation which you look at. But my perception when I interview younger folks, mid-20s, is that they have a better understanding of things, a more balanced approach. Their questioning in interviews are less about the career growth, more about the environment, other people who work there, what other fun activities we have in the organization. They're more than the growth in the career, more about what they can learn along the journey. Do you have any data on that?
I don't have data I can share right now, but I do this with younger. And what I can say, finance is a big gap for the younger. Especially in Southeast Asia, of course, the salaries are very low at entry level, and that's a struggle. But they are more balanced overall, and they understand, they're not just as hard working in that sense as the baby boomers, for example. And many of my clients are second generation business owners. They've taken over the business of parents who came out of World War II, perhaps. You know, it's tough, grinding through, and then passing over this generation to the second generation or the third generation now, and they are struggling. There's a mismatch there. I'm working on one particular case where the son is taking over the business, but the father is 62, 63, still the CEO, and there's that tug of war, the man is trying to hand it over. The father wouldn't want to let go, and the son want to take over. But the father cannot. When there is the board meeting, he cannot help himself to come in and try to start to make the decisions. While the younger one then will give up, because for him, purpose is more important. I don't really need this, so he can just give up. And that's where many times, it's not balanced, the conversation. Anyway, the favorites is army style preparations. Like Donna knows it because she traveled with me. I would never go to bed without laying out my clothes back from the door and that, so when I wake up with the alarm, we would just be in the same order, just put it on and out. Before I'm conscious, before I realize what's happening, and before watching the phone, whatever messages are there, I would just be army style robotic out the door and running, like I did this morning. I did not have one this morning. If I picked up my phone first and saw, I picked it up after on the way here, and just then I haven't replied yet. But if I picked it up in the morning, most likely that wrong would not have happened. So it's that discipline, having that automatic response, and having that army-style preparations for ourselves to just do it no matter what. And that is what I think is the key. And really getting it in the calendar. So in work we have the discipline, we show up for meetings because we have it in the calendar. I have a German triathlon coach, and it syncs with my calendar, and he sends me the calendar every Sunday for the week, and it goes in my calendar, and he color-coded, so whatever I achieve is green, and it's orange if I sort of did too little or too much, and it's red if I didn't do it. And I would be for sure in trouble if it's red. So I make sure I have the accountability in the structure, and I inform him, now I'm on this trip, so I cannot cycle, I don't have a cycle with me, so then he will give me extra running, for example, or swimming. And all the trips, wherever we stay, Donna and I will look up, make sure they have gym 24/7 if they can, they have a pool, or we stay where we can run around Marina Bay, like this morning, we're going to KL tomorrow, they have a pool, 24-hour gym. And I've already reached out to my friends in KL who knows the people with pools, making sure the pool is open on Sundays. So having that top of mind awareness when we go on a business trip, okay, how will I ensure that I'm keeping on track with my fitness and health and stick to my goals during this trip? Because if we just go there, then maybe the pool is closed and we show up and then we cancel it. So I even know I have a second and a third pool, I have a plan A, B, and C in KL. Happen on Sunday. It's in the calendar, and I send an invitation to Donna, so if she wants to come and swim with there. So it's just really being that thoughtful and thinking a step ahead, not just jump away on a business trip, because I travel 250 plus days a year. It would be easy for me to gain weight or to not do the training. People say, how can you do an Ironman when you travel the whole time? You live in an airplane. Because it's for us to get in the calendar, plan ahead. And even when I have a buffet breakfast, or like this morning staying at the 5-star hotels, everything is set up for us to pay. If you think about, you go up to the buffet, what plate do they normally serve where you have a salad bar? What size plate? 6. The big, sorry? Salad, normally they have a small plate. And then you come to the main course, what plate do you have? The big plate. So I'm very disciplined when I go into these buffets, and Donna and I, we spent 4 months, I think, in the Maldives last year. We had 3 buffets a day at some of the best places. But I would always, the first thing I do, I see a buffet, I know I'm going to buffet, I go and I take the big plate, then I go to the salad, and I fit as much salad and vegetables as I can on the big plate. I add maybe a small piece of salmon or something, spice it up a little bit, make it interesting, some olive oil, and then I go to my table and I eat that whole salad for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and after that I can eat whatever I want. But most often when I eat that food, I'm not much desire for anything more. Right? But in the mornings, yes, I would have a raw tuna steak or something like that. So it's about thinking ahead. Planning, not just show up randomly at the buffet, because then I can go for the desserts and all kind of things, which I can do when we celebrate Donna's 40 years birthday tomorrow night, me and her. Then I can have it. If I do that every day, then my cholesterol shoots through the roof, and I will not be able to do what I want to do in my life. So it's about just thinking ahead and having that. That's what works for me. Because then we are bringing in also all of this to your workplace, which means we all going to perform better. That's why I call it holistic leadership, because I believe that if someone has a relationship, a romance or 2, it will impact them at work too. Surely, they will feel guilty, they will feel in the gut that the relationship, marriage is not good, and it will impact their health, but also it will impact the performance at work. That's why it's important to look at all these steps. So surrender, purpose, connection, goals, and the discipline. And as I said, I believe we can turn back time, like how I did. I'm 50 now, so I'm 51. But I'm making the things now that I should when I was 23 years of age. But it's not with regrets. I'm digging back and doing it now. Because it's better I do it now than 10 or 20 years later on. Here's a good friend of mine, Jonas Bohr. He says that you're never too old to grow young. Jonas Bohr is from Sweden. He's 58 now. and he just beat the world record in cycling, the speed record on the 200 kilometer cycling. He's trying to prove that age is just a number and constantly challenging things, and we can do that. I also have a swimming buddy of mine who is 71 years of age now, who, thanks to this formula and the questions, picked up swimming again. He had not been swimming for 30 years, but as he was connecting with what he would like to do in the gym, what he didn't do, well, he was a swimmer. So I gave him homework, just try that, be curious, join some swim school. He drove me crazy. He was 69 then. Now he's 71 and he's swimming competition. He just won a 5-kilometer ocean swim, the ocean man, standing there being super happy, seeing we're connected, doing what he loved to do. So it's never too late. And this is what I call a life beyond my wildest dreams. The life I have today, as I shared, is a life full of intention, having cleaned up the stuff that I was afraid of, taking the ownership for the dark side of my life, and really making that dark side golden nugget that I'm proud of instead, and having healthy conversations with myself and the people around me.